Justice Warriors, good morning. I was almost going to do a live just so I could say coming at you live from my living room couch, but I wanted to make this a pre-recorded so it can be real specific for the sake of conversation. I always am hoping to open up a discussion and be educational and learn something. And all my videos so far are made specifically for YouTube, and we all know that's an entertainment platform. So, I want to talk about the Kylie Rodney case, probably throw a little bit of the Idaho 4 case in there, and I'm wanting to get into Watts Island. I mean, not really wanting to get into Watts Island, but feeling compelled. Okay, so let's start with Kylie Rodney. Um, The culture of Lake Tahoe is very specific, right? And, I've shared with you guys that I've had the good fortune of having access to a lodge type of like private cabin kind of thing right on Donner Lake years ago when I was in graduate school in San Francisco. So that really opened my eyes to a lot. I was surprised because at first I didn't take my own personal experience there into consideration in discussing this case because I didn't think it had any relevancy. And then the more the case went on, I realized that it actually did play a part in how the psyche of the town and specific to Truckee and specific to the Donner Lake area and Donner Pass. And as you guys have come to understand, that is huge. And the Lost Trail Lodge right up there by very, very close to where the greatest tragedy of human loss in modern day history. I guess that's arguable, but that's pretty much how it's defined. The Donner Party. Absolute catastrophe. And it wasn't just from weather and bad luck, it was from a lot of poor planning. It was from horrible leadership that really, really screwed things up. So you got to look at the leadership. You got to look at the leadership in the community and in the law enforcement, in the city government, that kind of thing. The Spy Who Loved Me. Yeah, Bibi Dahl. Do you guys remember that character? That character, probably the youngest tryst, uh, uh, the youngest character for a tryst or Bond girl, if that. Um, Unbelievable. I remember real well when I saw it when it first came out and how that character was jumping on a trampoline, doing her training for the Olympics, and she was pouting like a little toddler. She was doing her training and they had their thing, and she was a real villain, right? I mean, she was like the protege of a lord, a dealer. I think that that movie gives some insight into what the culture of this area is like. So I just find it extremely important to discuss that specifically, like right to the point. Another issue that I want to discuss specifically, right to the point, is the surveillance systems that pretty much are all over Tahoe. In this day and age, especially, and with so many vacation homes and so many extremely wealthy people that don't have, um, they might not have people staying in their cabins and their lodges all the time. So of course they've got surveillance systems, right? And we all know that businesses are going to have surveillance systems. So it's my guess that the law enforcement in that area can nail down exactly or pretty precisely where all of these players in this Kylie Rodney story were that evening and at what time and where Kylie Rodney was and what exactly the minute when you're looking at these surveillance systems that are often set to like a universal timing system. So it's obvious that this case is a huge, huge cover up. And That stupid fire cam video, and not just the video itself, but the way it was brought out to the streets of YouTube, the way there were people bashing each other because, you're too stupid to understand the fire cam video. I'm not going to explain it to you again. Like, can content creators like not attack each other? It's so juvenile. It's so ridiculous. We're all trying our best. None of us are going to be right all the time. We are all going to make mistakes, and it's fine. It's fine to be incorrect. I say it again and again. I mean, I know a lot of things about these cases. I know a lot about the law. I have experience working in the courts. I have experience with family members that are law enforcement and military and firefighter, first responder. So I have access to a lot of this type of information. And you have to know that every case is different. Every single case is different. So just because it's looking like it's the law, it's the interpretation of the law, it's knowing how to apply the law, it's knowing how to communicate about the law. And then it's a matter of if people are actually following the law, especially law enforcement, because they do have a carte blanche to bend the rules, break the rules, do whatever they need to do to get their job done. And that's why they've got immunity, but that immunity can get easily abused, can and does. So that's where we really have to keep our eyes out. So the culture of the Sierra Mountains and Tahoe is very Epstein-esque, is pretty much what I was saying. So I just want to put it in that context. Um, and let's see, I was going to go over to the Idaho 4 case real quick. I have discovered that the criminal defendant was in a fraternity when he was in Pennsylvania. It was a fraternity that was real specific to psychology majors. So I'm very interested in learning if he's still connected with that fraternity and if he had any connections with the Greek system there in Pullman and or Moscow. Um, Also, if what's written in the arrest affidavit and DM's account of what she witnessed that night is accurate, and his hair was exposed, and he had a black mask on, and we all know his bushy eyebrows and his non-muscular athletic build, or is it non-athletic muscular build? I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but give me a freaking break. Anyway, if his hair was exposed and he was whacking 4 people in 8 minutes, he wouldn't have been able to not be dropping his hairs around that house, you guys. Like, that's nuts. The longer that time passes and the more information that comes out on this case, the more convinced I become that he has been pegged as the fall guy. And if you guys don't think that happened, I guess live and learn, you know? I'm not gonna try to convince people that want to believe something. It's fine if you believe something different than me. I'm telling you my opinion, and everything I say is simply my opinion, as we covered earlier, right? All right. So, to get to Watts Island, you guys, oh my goodness. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with that whole case already. We are coming up on the 5-year anniversary. I believe it's August 13th, 2018. So here we are, August 9th, 4 days away. And it is, to me, and I think to many people, one of the most disgusting, despicable, horrifying cases in modern history. Probably nationwide, worldwide. Absolutely. Like right up there with the freaking Donner Party, El Disgusto. But what is so there's many, many factors of that case that are so compelling. And, there's people like Kelly from What's the Obsession who built her whole channel on that case. And a lot of content creators built their channels on that case. It's monumental. It's absolutely monumental. But essentially, to break down what, in my opinion, went wrong in that case is that once Chris Watts confessed, that they took his confession as the gospel. Like, really? Somebody who's going to do that to their family is then going to tell you the truth. Got it. Right. If you've looked into that case, you know that that individual, Chris Watts, is the kind of person who can't tie his shoes without a woman telling him that he needs to tie his shoes. I mean, that man is so dependent and spineless. And he went from having a very domineering mother to marrying Shanann. His parents, his whole family wasn't allowed to go to his wedding because the mother was in a conflict with Shanann. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, in my opinion, just laying for this entire trauma to occur. I mean, what a horrible way to start your marriage, and what a horrible way to parent your child. And I just won't even get into it further than that, but I am firm that that's ridiculous. So, we've got a few years later, the man gets into a relationship at work with somebody that he thinks is super, super hot, and then he's allowing her to make his decisions for him and tell him what to think and how to think and when to think or not to think. Um, so that individual who destroyed evidence, she deleted text, she deleted photos, she deleted everything out of her contacts in her phone, and told law enforcement that she did that, and destroyed her SIM card and all kinds of other insane BS. She was never treated as a suspect, as an accomplice before, during, or after the fact, and she was literally treated as a protected person. And it's come to light. We know she had a history where she'd been arrested in her teen years. It was Paula Plunder that I learned that from. And I want to give a huge shout out to Paula Plunder because she's the one who obtained that 3 hour and 33-minute video of the main interview in person with NK and her father and law enforcement. And for the longest time, for years, people were told that that video didn't exist. And it was obvious that it did. And it was shocking when it was finally released to Paula from Plunder. It was only released because she was relentless in pursuing that and following up, and she's a real professional. So that, I think, changed the case so much, to see what was going on with expressions, with the crushing of the bottle when, not wanting to say the woman's name, that woman, Shanann. Shanann. She does that. She actually said she does it more like this. Shanann. I mean, it's crazy. It's completely insane. Or when she's talking about the kids that she never saw, and she's like, they're so little. How do you know how little they were if you didn't actually come into contact with them? I mean, a lot of things like that. But back to just giving a giant shout out to Paula Plunder for getting that videotape released, because we all had heard the audio, but never seen the video. And I honestly didn't think any of us ever would. I didn't think that she'd ever get it. I'd been communicating with her about it and was hopeful that she would, but I didn't want to get my hopes up. Um, so that was a huge win for justice and for true crime and for that channel specifically. I mean, she does really solid work. Um, but just looking at, again, how NK was being protected, how she was being guided in the interview, like she was kind of being told the answers. Not only was her father protecting her, but the detectives seemed to be, in my opinion, just going through the motions. Like they had to like check these things off a list that yes, we talked about this and yes, we covered that, but they were really like egging her along and helping her with the right answers to just move right along. And when they ceased the investigation and did not attempt to match up the actual hard evidence with the story that Chris Watts had, that was awful. And then when the investigators went and visited Chris Watts in prison in Wisconsin about a year and a half later, and he told them a completely different story. And then somewhere in there, there's a third story. It's my opinion that none of those stories are accurate and that the true story will probably never be revealed. But there are many content creators who have taken the situation, of the facts, of the documentation, and they've lined it all up and they've seen where the holes are, they've seen where the gaps are, and there's no statute of limitations on homicide. None. There's no statute of limitations. So don't get me wrong. Chris Watts is exactly where he belongs for life, but it does not add up at all that he operated in a vacuum by himself without anyone else's knowledge. So I'm hopeful that as this 5-year anniversary is coming up, there's going to be a lot more attention paid to this case and the injustices and honoring the lives of Shanann Watts, Bella Watts, Cece Watts, and little unborn Nico Watts. What a heartbreaking, heartbreaking situation and absolutely vile. So I'm going to be talking about that case more as the anniversary is coming up, and I plan to continue to be involved in the Kylie Rodney pursuit of justice because she needs us. She needs people that care, in my humble opinion. So again, I'll ask you to please hit your thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, and ring your notification bell if you like to have notification when videos are dropped. Thank you so much for watching. I'm coming up on my anniversary of having this channel, and I am just ever so grateful for every single one of you that comes into my chats and comes into my comment section. And even if you are a lurker and don't do either of those things, just watching, hitting that like button is really helpful. And you matter, Kylie matters, Idaho 4 matters, the Watts family matters. Justice for these victims, you guys. Have a great rest of your day. I hope you can get some sunshine and fresh air, exercise. You know the routine. Stay hydrated, eat high protein, high produce, and just do your best. Be cool. See you on the next one. Thanks.